Okay, we can definitely start. Welcome everyone to today's webinar brought to you by Legal Tech Talent Network in partnership with Clio. We are so excited to have Clio with us to talk about the insights from their latest legal trends report. This session will provide a valuable guidance in how to use these insights to position your firm for success in an ever-expanding legal landscape. For those of you unfamiliar with us, Legal Tech Talent Network is a consulting firm dedicated exclusively to the legal technology vertical. We connect highly skilled professionals with organizations including law firms, government agencies, and corporations. Our services range from executive search, contract staffing, to software consulting, like Clio. We cater for diverse needs of legal teams and provide expertise in key areas such as DMS, e-discovery, cybersecurity, and litigation support. I'm thrilled to be joined by Joshua Lenon, Clio's esteemed lawyer in residence. Joshua brings years of expertise as a legal technology thought leader and will give us a deep dive in the findings of this year's report. As your co-host, I'm based in the EMEA region, and through the Legal Tech Talent Network, I can assist you with any Clio consulting and anything else Clio related you need. LTTN is based in the US and also has consultants there. So if you need any consultancy based in the US, you can contact us for that as well. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Joshua.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the Legal Tech Talent Network for inviting me to present today. And I want to welcome everyone to our latest release of the Legal Trends Report. We're going to go over an introduction to the Legal Trends Report, our newest findings, some takeaways that I hope will help you with the information that we're presenting, and time for questions. If you have questions as we're presenting, go ahead and type them into the Q&A so that way we can address them at the end. We do internally abbreviate the Legal Trends Report as LTR, and so I know at some point I'm going to say LTR, and so this way you know what I'm talking about. Who am I? I am the lawyer in residence at Clio. It's actually a really interesting meta role for over 12 years now. I've been helping Clio research the intersection of technology and the practice of law when it comes to compliance, ethics, business opportunities. We take a look at all of it. I'm very active on social media with Blue Sky being my current network of choice. I'm an attorney admitted into New York, and I'm a certified privacy professional with the International Association of Privacy Professionals. And while I've been fortunate to be contributing to the Legal Trends Report, this is a work of an enormous team of Cleons, which is what we call ourselves internally, who work year-round on finding hypotheses, testing the data, and working to present the information that you see today in what we hope is a very accessible and digestible method. And so I really do want to give this team a moment of credit and thank them for the hard work that they've done today. And with that, let's jump into our first section, an introduction to the Legal Trends Report. Now, first of all, you can download the Legal Trends Report. It's available for free to everyone at clio.com/LTR, or you can use this QR code that you see in your screen in front of you. And you won't just find this year's Legal Trends Report. You'll actually find all 9 annual editions of the Legal Trends Report, as well as our previous published reports that focus on solo and small law firms and mid-sized law firms. And what makes the Legal Trends Report unique is that we provide insight into the practice of law that has never existed before. And this is possible because of the data that is included in the Legal Trends Report. This data is primarily contributed by tens of thousands of Clio using law firms. They actually contribute their usage statistics of Clio, and we have analyzed and aggregated that data in order to provide a lot of the insights that you see today. Unfortunately, big data often leads to big questions, and so we always supplement our Legal Trends Report with a survey of both legal professionals and consumers to try and give us the why behind the numbers. We also this year conducted an outreach to over 500 randomly selected law firms in the United States, posing as potential clients to see what the experience and responsiveness of these firms is. And we've also done a groundbreaking bit of research using an internally hosted large language learning model to assess work activities and time entries as stored within Clio. And finally, we have historical anonymized profit and loss statements from 122 solo, small, and medium-sized law firms within the United States. And we pulled all this data together to create this legal trends report. Now, I've talked about usage statistics, so I do want to make sure you're really clear what we're talking about here. Because Clio is cloud-based, we get direct data from each subscriber on how they're using the software. I want to stress, this is not client files or confidential information. Instead, it's settings that you adjust within Clio, certain types of login and quality control statistics that come our way as a provider of software. But when you look at just this limited view, because there are tens of thousands of law firms who are contributing this data, it actually adds up into something special. And I want to give you an example of how that happens. You can set an hourly fee in Clio. And so let's think that there's a hypothetical law firm out there charging $20 an hour, and another hypothetical law firm at the top end charging $2,000 an hour. I can't tell you which law firm, which lawyer, which client they're billing this amount to, but I can tell you that those settings exist in Clio. And we need to know that so we can support both ends of this spectrum, right? Are our bills calculating properly with $20 as the hourly rate? Are they calculating properly with $2,000? Are we creating the proper spacing for the communication of those numbers? These are all things that we have to think about as a provider of software. But because we have this setting, I can actually see a bell curve of all the rates that have been set in Clio. And I can tell you what the average hourly billing rate for lawyers in North America is. And you're seeing it on your screen right now. It's around $340 per hour. If I add another bit of data, so what's the geography of the firms that are doing that setting, right? I can now tell you across every state in the United States, what's the average hourly fee within that state. We can see large variance on this map of some firms that are charging well above what the national average of 340, and some that are charging a lot less. And now you're able to know what is the billing rate within my state. When I started practicing law, this information was not available. In fact, if I wanted to figure out what was an appropriate hourly rate to set for my clients, I basically had to guess. I could ask a couple lawyers around me. They might not do my type of law. They might not have the same business or clients that I was targeting, but there was no way to do this research. Now we can see the average hourly rate, but we can go even deeper. If we add practice area, I can actually tell you the average hourly rate across different practice areas. And this information has been published in the Legal Trends Report in our appendix, and you can access it online as a part of our benchmark rate calculator. So if you're a law firm that's looking to see, am I charging too little? Am I charging too much? How should I be adjusting my fees, both for myself and for non-lawyers? We've got you covered. More information exists on this than it ever has before. And we actually have been tracking this ever since we've been publishing the Legal Trends Report all the way back into 2016. The billable hour index tracks those average hourly rates year over year. And what we can see is that lawyers, as I said, are around average $340 an hour. It's about a 4% increase over the previous year. That tends to be the average. And because of that steady increase, we actually see that lawyers' hourly rates tend to match or exceed inflation. If you look at the orange line here, this is the consumer price index. It's how inflation is measured in the United States. And we see that the consumer price index is around $313. And so the $340 an hour for our lawyer service is well above that and continues to remain above that. It adjusts over time. But there are two other lines on here. There's the purple line, which we record the average hourly rate for non-lawyers. And here you can see it does not advance as fast as the lawyer rate and is hovering for a long time under $200. And that actually drags the rest of the firm down when we look at that green line, which is the law firm rate, a blended rate of the lawyer and non-lawyer average hourly rates. It's right around $314 an hour. And so what we see is firms that rely very heavily on non-lawyer timekeepers as a part of their billing may actually be losing money to inflation because they're just not keeping up. If they had been keeping up with inflation, what we would see is that the non-lawyer rate would be well above $200. That would lift that law firm rate, even though keeping pace with inflation, the lawyer rate would actually be lower. And so you should be thinking about, how is my hourly rate impacting my ability to keep pace with inflation? Should I be adjusting it? Should I be adjusting it more for certain timekeepers? Now, the good news is what we see is law firms are more productive than ever. When we look at key performance indicators for law firms, and this is also an abbreviation we say, KPI, there are 4 that we've been tracking as part of the Legal Trends Report. The first of which is utilization rate, and that is the number of billable hours worked divided by the number of hours in a workday. And surveys have told us that law firms, on average, are working about 8 hours a day. There are definitely days and weeks when you work more. We know there are weekends that are in there as well, but on average, it's about 8 hours a day. And what we see is that most lawyers are only billing about 37% of their day. It's not a large amount. The next KPI down is the realization rate. I have recorded these hours. Now, how many of those hours end up on an invoice or a bill? This is a stat that is 100% within the control of the law firm. And yet we consistently see lawyers writing themselves down. And so the realization rate for our 2024 is around 88%. That's law firms giving up over 10% of their anticipated revenue just by giving themselves this haircut. And then finally, once those depleted invoices actually go out to clients, how much are they actually paying? That's the collection rate. And we see the collection rate for law firms for 2024 is around 91%. And this is actually better than we've seen in the previous 2 years. And we are very encouraged by that. But these stats still show that for a business where time is literally money, we don't spend a lot of our time working on billable activities. In fact, in what we call the lawyer funnel, you can see how we have these cuts along the way, where a utilization rate of 37% is only 2.9 hours per day billed. Then when we give ourselves that realization write-down, it's down to 2.6 hours is what ends up on the bill. And lastly, because of collections, we're only getting paid for 2.3 hours at the end of the day. We see basically a lot of cuts here. And that space is often filled with administrative work, technology management, licensing and training like you're going through now, thank you, but it's not necessarily revenue generating activities. And so we do think you need to be mindful of, am I the best person to be doing this activity if it's not a billable activity? Now, fortunately, as I said, productivity is increasing in law firms, and we track that as a part of our legal productivity index. When 2020, we actually looked at the impact of the pandemic upon our law firm data. And then we started tracking how much recovery has there been. And then we pulled that data out for the entire length of the Legal Trends Report. And what we have found is that timekeepers are handling more cases or matters than ever before. So over 25% more. And they're actually recording more hours for those cases, around 22% more than we've seen over the last 9 years. And importantly, when we go to how much of that is billed and how much of that is collected, we actually see a really large jump in billed amount and collections per timekeeper and law firm. Law firms are being more productive than ever, and because of better recording methods, better focus on utilization, and better focus on collections, you're reaping the rewards. But there's still a long way to go, and it's not the only metric you should be thinking about. Our last KPI that we publish as part of our legal trends report is that of law firm lockup. It measures how much of a firm's annual revenue is locked up in either an unbilled or an uncollected state. This might be your work in progress reports. This might be your accounts receivable that are past due. What it means is there's revenue that's owed to you for the work that you've done, and it's locked up someplace where you can't access it. And lockup is expressed in the number of days against your revenue. So if we're looking at our full year's revenue, how much of that revenue is currently locked up and unavailable, making a cash flow dilemma for the law firm. When we first published this back in 2023, we didn't actually know if things were on the right track or the wrong track. We just had some numbers. So this year, we're taking a look at a 12-month rolling revenue for lockup. And what we're seeing is the trend is mostly good. In these, the lines are going down. That means fewer days are having your revenue locked up. Realization lockup is the revenue of unbilled time just sitting in your records. A client can't pay it because they don't even know about it. And what we see is a rolling 12-month average for law firms is around 46 days or a month and a half of your firm's revenue just sitting locked up in your records. The bottom line, collection lockup, is actually pretty encouraging. We're seeing that collection lockup where a bill has been issued and you're waiting on a client to pay is a little less than a month. I'm excited to see that. And then lastly, there's total lockup. Total lockup is the combination of both realization and collection lockup. And what we see for North American law firms is the median total lockup is around 92 days. Now, we need to think about that. That's basically a quarter of your firm's annual revenue is trapped in that unbilled or uncollected state, right? And that's money that could go to pay salaries, rent, bringing in expert consultants like the Legal Tech Talent Network, being able to invest in your law firm. All of these metrics track performance, but also give you insight into where you can improve. Is my utilization rate meeting the average benchmark that we see in the Legal Trends Report? Or do I need to improve upon it? Is my realization rate lower than what I'm seeing in the Legal Trends Report? And should I be keeping more hours on my bill? Is my lockup higher than what I'm seeing? Should I be getting my bills out faster? These are all questions that you can ask and answer because we now have numbers that you can compare yourself against. So again, I definitely encourage you to download the latest Legal Trends Report. We publish these numbers and more every year, as well as additional groundbreaking research, which is what I'd like to jump into now. So our first finding, I don't think this is any surprise when I say it out loud, is that artificial intelligence is disrupting the legal industry. But I think most people don't realize the scope of that impact. Pardon me. As a part of this year's research, we're estimating that nearly 75% of hourly billable work could be automated by AI. And that's a really big number. And it's important that we really understand the impact of this number because there has been an incredibly rapid uptick in AI adoption by law firms. And that requires us to figure this out. In 2023, when we surveyed over 1,000 legal professionals, only 1 in 5 was telling us that they were using AI, about 20%. When we asked that same question this year in 2024, nearly 80% of legal professionals told us they are using AI. Now, how much they're using AI varies. The largest circle here, 34%, is minimal adoption. But there are some firms over on the far left at 8% who have universally adopted artificial intelligence tools and are using them throughout their law firm. What tools are they using? The largest category is still generic non-legal tools like your Chat GPTs, your Microsoft Copilots, but we're seeing the rise and adoption of legal specific artificial intelligence tools, including legal research platforms, legal document drafting, and e-discovery. I'm actually really excited by the 9% down at the bottom, predictive legal analytics. I think this is an area where we're going to see artificial intelligence look over past case law and history and really target specific judges and cases and arguments to give us a better idea of what our outcomes are going to be and help us plan strategies. And we're seeing that nearly 10% of legal professionals surveyed are taking a look at this type of tool. They're also telling us what type of task they're using artificial intelligence for. On the far left, we actually see that generating marketing material is the task that most legal professionals trust AI to handle. And on the right side, the task that they least trust AI to handle is vetting and intaking new clients. And when we get a little further in the presentation, I'd like to change your mind on this. I think there is a place for artificial intelligence to help us vet and intake new clients. Now, why are lawyers turning towards artificial intelligence? The primary benefit that they're telling us is that it saves them time and increases efficiency. That's 54% of responses. And that's a really great benefit. That's why I use artificial intelligence, part of my day-to-day workflow. But not as many lawyers are telling us that artificial intelligence increases their firm revenue. And when we look at the automation impact, I definitely think we have to revisit the impact of AI and revenue. Still, because of these benefits, we see that 84% of all law firms surveyed believe AI usage will increase. And even firms that aren't using AI, 68% of them believe AI usage will increase. AI is a part of law firms in the practice of law here. That's a takeaway that I think you should have. And you shouldn't worry about clients' perceptions of this. When we surveyed legal consumers, nearly half of potential clients told us that they want a law firm using or exploring AI. Another 28% said that they actually have no preference. They're fine with a law firm that uses AI. They're fine with a law firm that doesn't, so long as they get results. Less than a third said they don't want a law firm that uses AI. That means 70% of all clients are open to or expect a law firm to be using AI. This is the majority of your marketplace that you should be aiming for. And this preference for firms that are using AI is universal. When we broke down our survey demographics by generation, what we found is the smallest preference for firms that are using AI was in baby boomers, and it was still nearly 60%. And that preference for firms using AI only increased as we got into younger and younger generations. So law firms are adopting AI, clients are open and preferring law firms to adopt AI. But the potential financial impact of AI automation is much greater than most law firms realize. In 2023, Goldman Sachs published a study that got a lot of media attention, where they estimated in part that 44% of work activities in the legal industry could be automated by AI, and 40% of employees in the legal industry were likely to be replaced by AI. Now, they focused on work activities. And this is a classification system for tasks that are specific to different types of jobs that are published by the Occupational Information Network. It's a way in the United States of classifying jobs and the tasks that they do. If you are a gardener, for example, it might mean operating heavy machinery or carrying heavy items. That's a work activity. And there are over 900 different occupations that have been classified by the Occupational Information Network, or ONET, as they abbreviate their name. As I was looking at the work activities that were assigned to lawyers and to legal secretaries and paralegals as a part of this study, I noticed that ONET actually has their high-level work activities that you see here, but they also have much more detailed work activities that you can dive into by role. Here are some of the detailed work activities for lawyers, like prepare legal documents or evaluate findings, to develop strategies in preparation for a case. And the more I looked at these detailed work activities, the more they reminded me of time entries, which are things that are recorded in Clio. So what did we do? We grabbed 7 million anonymized and aggregated time entries, and we classified them against ONET's detailed work activities and then rated those for automation potential. And what did we find? 74% of all time entries that we reviewed could be automated using artificial intelligence. Now, the level of automation differed based upon the role. Lawyers, about 57% of their time entries were automatable by AI. Administrative assistants, over 80% of their work activities were automatable. And it wasn't that everything was automatable completely, but there was a very large degree depending upon their task. In fact, 3 different categories of work activities accounted for 66%, 2/3 of all time entries that we reviewed. Those are documenting and recording information, getting information, and analyzing data or information. When we look at that first one, right, documenting and recording information, the very first task is prepare legal documents. And we estimate that it is about 86% automatable, and it represents 98% of the time entries that fall into this work activity category. And if you think about that, right, when we look at generative AI tools, they're incredibly good at creating documents from scratch. Now, those documents have issues of accuracy and applicability. I think that's where that 14% that remains unautomated exists. But a huge chunk of drafting is now something that can just be handled by these tools. When we look at the getting information task, we see that 62% of these time entries are about examining legal data to determine the advisability of pursuing a lawsuit, and about 70% of that is automatable. If we think about the different types of actions that lawyers help prosecute or defend, really the bright line tests that exist within our case law or our statutes about their applicability, that's 70% of that can be gathered, reviewed, and automated. And our last category, that of analyzing data, right? The biggest group of that was evaluating findings and developing strategies in preparation for the presentation of cases. We're getting prepared for trial. And that, while 81% of all the time entries in this category, is 70% automatable. When we applied these automation predictions and looked at how much revenue that could potentially impact, what we saw is that AI automation could reduce hourly billing per lawyer by an estimated $27,000 annually. That's 57% of a lawyer's work activities automated away. And so a task that normally takes you, say, 3 hours has been reduced by 57% and now takes you less than an hour. Well, that's hourly billing revenue that's out the door. And can a law firm even afford to lose that much revenue? For that, we looked at the bottom line of law firm finances. And I do want to point out that we did this in partnership with CPN Legal. who is an accounting consultant that works with law firms, and they helped gather the anonymized and aggregated information from their customers because, quite frankly, their customers really trust them. It's these types of consultancies, like the Legal Tech Talent Network, that have helped Clio work directly with law firms and bring this type of information to you. So when we reviewed over 122 profit and loss statements that stretched over decades for these law firms, where were they spending their money? Staff salaries is easily the biggest expense that we see. But the two that jumped out to me are marketing and software. Marketing, the average is around 5% of annual revenue is spent. Software, it's around 2%. These are really low numbers. But interestingly, when we compare this against the service annual salary by the US Census Bureau, what we see is that growth in software and advertising spending by law firms has surpassed growth in revenue. You need to be spending this money in order to keep bringing money into the law firm. And so when we looked at that lawyer funnel and there were nearly 6 hours of non-billable day, this might be actually where you're spending some of this time. And the growth rates for spending on these types of activities has increased dramatically for software. It's grown 21% since 2012. Now, not all law firms spend equally on software. What we see is the larger the software, the more you're spending. But firms that spend more on software and more on marketing were more profitable. What we saw is that firms that spent closer to 3% on software and closer to 7% of revenue on marketing had a 21% boost in profits. And so these are a necessary component to running your law firm and something that we really do need to keep in mind. Are we targeting the right software? Are we utilizing it to its full advantage? And are we marketing ourselves in a way that brings in the right client? So what are law firms telling us they're using technology-wise? The highest one was cloud-based data storage, and this makes sense. Previous legal trends reports have shown that lawyers are actually really mobile in our working environments. Most lawyers work from 2 to 3 different locations every month. And that might be your home office, that might be your actual commercial office. It might be that you're visiting somebody and working. But law firms are really mobile, and cloud-based data storage makes that possible. Video conferencing, e-signatures, cloud-based practice management are all in here. What jumped out to me, though, was that accounting was only used by about half of respondents, which means that you might not be able to see this level of detail that we have here on your own firm's annual spend. And we also see that fewer law firms are using client intake tools, website design tools, and generative AI tools that can help them. How are you marketing your services? Most of you rely upon referrals, word of mouth, so people who've had a good experience with your law firm, and your company website. And unfortunately, none of these things are being handled well in our next portion, maximizing potential client pipelines. In 2019, we actually did a secret shopping experiment where we reached out with targeted inquiries to over 1,000 law firms via email, and then called them with 500 different law firms. And unfortunately, the numbers were pretty grim in 2019. 60% of law firms didn't respond at all. Only 28% of law firms provided clear next steps in how to hire that law firm. Of the 1,000 emails we sent, only 2 actually met the criteria we listed for having a good client intake response to an initial email. We called 500 law firms because email just wasn't getting answered. Over half answered their phone, which is great, but only 7% of those calls rated excellent client service, 20 out of 500. So we recreated that secret shopping experience here in 2024. 500 random law firms, targeted inquiries from potential clients. And what did those secret shoppers tell us about their experience. 73% of our shoppers were unlikely to recommend the law firms with whom they communicated. These law firms that are relying upon referrals and word of mouth have just alienated 2/3 of the people who reached out to them. They are not driving referrals, even from potential clients. We broke down the ways that you can reach out to law firms with the secret shoppers. And they were phone calls, including phones that were answered versus phones that weren't, chatbots, email, website intake forms. And what we found is law firms that answered their phones scored the highest. I don't think that's any surprise. If you can do one takeaway when it comes to business development for your law firm, it's get an answering service that answers every time, that it's not relying upon you to be available and free to answer the phone. But you can't get an answering service. The second highest satisfaction came from chatbots. Our secret shopper rated chatbots as higher for outstanding customer service, as higher when it came to understanding the step-by-step process to hiring the lawyer. We're going to have a consultation. I'm going to do a conflict check. We're going to do an engagement agreement. You're going to deposit some funds, maybe into trust as an advance fee deposit. These are the steps. Chatbots also rated second best when it came to customer service. Sorry, one more. How to work with a lawyer and how to find pricing information. Although to be fair, pricing information performed really poorly across all of the channels. We just aren't doing a good job of telling clients how we bill and how they're expected to pay. Now, the one bit of good news is for the law firms that did answer email, they were slightly faster. So in 2019, only 82% answered within 8 business hours. In 2024, 84% of you did, but responding within 2 business days, you are a little bit better about that as well. But then what was in those emails was unfortunately way worse. So when it came to providing information on like just what the next step are, nearly 30% in 2019 provided that information, but only 18% did in 2024. When it came to the fact that the law firm had handled similar situations in an email, right? Only 2% of law firms in 2024 included that. Hi, I'm reaching out to you about divorcing my spouse. Do you handle divorces? This really is a one-sentence answer. Yes, my firm handles divorces. And yet only 2% of law firms included that in a response to an email from a potential client. And the law firms just aren't providing rate information at an overall cost. In fact, you can't even get most law firms to tell you whether or not they're billing hourly or flat fee. This is probably the best performing stat on the left side of the screen. And still, less than half of law firms provided that when asked, do you bill hourly or do you have flat fee options? And so clients are just frustrated. Now, when it comes to your website, that other second highest business development channel, right? We see that our secret shoppers are able to find your websites, but they're not able to find information on that. What's the process of hiring you? What type of customer service will I be expecting? Can I find pricing information? In fact, when we surveyed legal consumers, nearly 60% want to know what the cost of their matter is, whether average, projected, estimates, but only 10% could find that information on a law firm's website. And 48% want to know how they'll be billed. Do I need to give you an advance fee deposit? Is there an evergreen trust amount that I need to store with you? Can I pay via credit card, right? A lot of that is just not there. Only 11% of legal consumers we surveyed told us they could. That's 100 out of 1,000. Now, the good news is chatbots as the second highest performers are actually fairly popular. with legal consumers. 51% said that they're a useful starting point for exploring legal options, but 61% told us they only want to use the chatbot if they could switch to a lawyer if needed. So I think chatbots are actually a really great way of vetting and automating intake. That thing that we saw lawyers trust the least for artificial intelligence may actually be one of your better investments for artificial intelligence. You can be using it to answer simple questions like, do you handle this type of case? Do you bill hourly or are flat fees an option? Can I pay by credit card? These are all questions that a chatbot can answer on your behalf. And then once those answers help guide the proper clients to contacting you, they can actually handle the scheduling of that first consultation, freeing you up from having to answer these repetitive questions, freeing you from having to winnow out inappropriate inquiries, and letting you focus on the best client and the best client experience when the time comes. And we actually know that an ideal client intake actually has positive benefits. Clio's client intake tool actually has several features that help with the onboarding of clients. We look specifically at e-signatures, integrated online search ads, an online scheduler for booking consultations and other meetings at times that you block off, online intake forms, and text messaging. And what we found is firms that were using this client intake technology, mostly the online schedulers, search ads, and online intake forms, they actually had 51% more client leads and 52% more revenue compared to firms that weren't using these features and this tool. So a better onboarding experience, even that goes through technology, actually leads to positive rewards from clients for your law firm. And what we found is that these features actually enable more potential clients to just hire you. Firms using e-signatures actually had a 10 percentage point increase in conversion rates. They just brought in 10% more clients. And this one makes sense to me, right? If I'm hiring any business and they want to fax me a contract, have me sign it, have me then figure out how to fax it back to them, I'm not going to hire that business. But I get an email with an engagement agreement, a click here to sign now. I can do that on my mobile phone, and I will happily do that to hire the right business. And so these features build a better client onboarding experience, and clients are rewarding the firms that use them. We also see that you spend less time getting somebody from potential to actual client here, where tools like e-signatures, online search ads, and online schedulers increase the speed in which clients hire you. For full transparency, though, we found a negative 1% on text messaging when it came to time to hire. Now, there was a positive benefit in conversion rate, but it might just be a little slower when using text messaging, and we don't know why. There are always some questions that just remain out there. And one last fact about maximizing your client pipeline is the online intake forms in Clio Grow actually have two settings. There are some that are public facing. Anyone can access them and fill out the information. They can be a part of your website. And then there are those that are direct or private, and you've sent them to a particular individual to fill out, right? And what we found is that law firms that enabled public intake forms on their websites, they actually had a 71% higher volume of incoming potential clients. Now you still have to work your way through those, finding the right fit, making sure that they have the right cases that you can help them with, that they're able to pay. But if you are a new business, or if you're having some slow months, public intake forms might be one way to actually drive clients to your law firm. And then once you have them there, clients want to pay flat fees or fixed fees, depending upon the marketplace. And I believe this is the future of law firm billing. Now, We looked at what practice areas are using flat fees and how predominant are they as a part of their practice areas. And there were some that are no surprise to me. Traffic offenses within North America is almost entirely flat fee. Immigration is as well. Criminal is very interesting that it's a little over half is charged by flat fee. And this is criminal defense attorneys. And we know within the US system, what we see is criminal defense attorneys will bring on a client and charge them a flat fee for arraignment and maybe plea bargaining. But if the case goes to trial, then we switch over to hourly. But what we're seeing is more and more law firms are actually utilizing flat fees as a part of their services. Intellectual property, administrative law, government and tax law all have a large component of their revenue coming from flat fees. And we haven't just seen them be used more frequently, we've seen them be used in greater amounts. We're charging more and more via flat fee. And that tells me two things. One, there's a benefit to this price certainty. And so clients are willing to pay more, even though it's a flat fee, because it's a flat fee. And secondly, that we can probably start handling more and more complex matters as flat fees or as partially billed in flat fees, because we're able to get a better handle on the work that's involved. In fact, when adjusting for inflation, what we see is that revenue from flat fee matters has increased by 51% since 2016. And so when we look at just how law firms bill, it's that growth in flat fees is actually corresponding with a decrease in hourly billing. And the value of those flat fee matters is just growing faster. The increased value of an average hourly matter is just at 27%, but the increased value of the average flat fee matter has grown nearly 100% at 92%. And we even see that in certain practice areas, the flat fee actually gets more revenue than the hourly fee. For medical malpractice, personal injury, administrative, and trust, firms that are charging a flat fee, the median case value is always higher than the hourly billing. And flat fees are actually collected faster. You're twice as likely to collect payments almost immediately on a flat fee matter than on an hourly billing matter. And the time to close that matter is actually twice as fast as well. Twice as fast to collect, twice as fast to finish. This is the draw of flat fees for law firms. But clients are telling us that they really want this type of modern delivery service as well. 52% of clients say they want options when it comes to paying. And when we ask them what those options, the one they prefer the most is to pay a flat fee for their entire case. 71% of clients tell us that. Only 30% of law firms, 50% of law firms had that as an option. And interestingly, 71% of law firms offer hourly billing, but only 41% of clients want that. And when clients tell us about the law firms they've hired and the legal work that they've done, interestingly, a greater number of clients are saying they're hiring flat fee firms than what we're seeing offered by law firms themselves, right? And so more clients are opting into flat fee legal services. So what does that mean? I think it means that law firms need to get better about adjusting their billing methods away from hourly and including some type of flat fee component. Now, the good news is that it actually very much aligns with preserving yourself from the impact of AI automation. And I'm going to bring this home with two last slides, and then we'll go into our takeaways. When we ask law firms, do you bill exclusively in flat fees, and how widely have you adopted artificial intelligence? The firms that bill exclusively in flat fees were the highest adopters of artificial intelligence tools. They know that those increases in productivity actually don't hamper the firm revenue because they're charging a reasonable flat fee. And the faster they work, the sooner they're done. They can bring on more clients in more matters. or they can just enjoy some time at the end of the day. That race to record more time isn't the goal of these types of law firms. Productivity and efficiency is. All right, so what are some takeaways that I think we can have from our latest legal trends report? One, law firm revenue will be impacted by AI automation, especially if you bill solely on an hourly basis. So you should be dedicating budget to technology advancement, bringing these AI tools on, but also increasing your marketing and bringing in more clients to adjust for potential loss in revenue. You should be maximizing your technology and marketing investment. Don't underutilize the tools that you have. Make sure your website has the information that clients want. Make sure they're able to interact with your website, your phone system in such a way that it leads towards a positive experience. Even if they're not the right client and they don't end up hiring you, let them leave with a good experience because you do rely upon that word of mouth. Start shifting to a hybrid billing model. If clients are looking for flat fees, figure out what repetitive tasks you can automate and start billing flat fee for that. It might not be the whole matter, but you can tell them this portion will be flat fee, this portion will be hourly. Let me give you an estimate of how that all is going to come together. And here are some actions if you just want to experiment with this going forward. First, definitely take a look at your annual benchmarks. Recognize that AI is integrated into the legal industry and budget for your growth and bringing clients on board. And lastly, flatten your fees. How? Document your firm performance, bring on a single artificial workflow, account for your firm finances, sell yourself, and fix a flat fee. How do we do that? Documenting firm performance. You can use the Legal Trends Report now to find the benchmarks that we talked about, those KPIs, right? And you can use tools like Clio Manage or Clio Accounting to compare your firm's performance against those reported benchmarks. What is your targeted improvement? Pick one task that you will try through AI. We are currently building a tool called Clio Duo that can really help you with this. And so take a look at the tools that are available and just pick one task and see how would you automate it. I actually think you should take a look at automating an email for your potential perfect client. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. Next, account for firm performance. Definitely calculate your firm's spending on software and marketing. We do know that personal injury law firms are really good about calculating their marketing budget and often spend upwards of 10% of their annual revenue on marketing because each case they pull in has the potential for really large return on investments. Look at tools like Clio Accounting and Clio Grow to really track your return on investments when it comes to your performance. And sell yourself. When we did our secret shopper, we looked for these 6 items in a response. It had a likable tone, provided information that was clear, it provided next steps, provided some information on rates and costs, right? It referenced similar situations and provided information on what to expect from the legal process. That's it, 6 things that should be in your perfect email. I actually went to ChatGPT and just asked it to write this email for me. No confidential information, no client data, just a simple prompt of write an email response from a lawyer to a new client who's reached out. And then you can add information like reached out about a divorce, reached out about tax planning, reached out about international shipping contracts, whatever you want. And then those 6 points. And within 5 seconds, I had that email. Now, a little editing to make sure it lined up with what I wanted to say, but this is an artificial workflow that you can set up today and use it to sell yourself. It's 5 seconds on ChatGPT. And then lastly, fix a flat fee. So take a look at what is the median case value for your cases, right? And then just set a flat fee of 20% above that and see if a client will pay that. If you're looking for some guidance on what are some case values, in the 2018 Legal Trends Report, we actually published a range of case values by practice area. And I recommend that you swing by our website, download it, and check it out. And that leads us to our further resources. please feel free to download the latest Clio Legal Trends Report. Learn a little bit more about Clio's offerings, Clio Manage, Clio Grow, Clio Draft, our advanced document automation system, Clio Accounting and Payments, and Clio's personal injury add-on are all different tools that can help increase your firm's productivity, track your accountability, and lead towards an incredible return on investment for law firms. And if you have questions about how to make these tools really fit your particular law firm, I recommend you reach out to our partners at Legal Tech Talent Network with their contact information right here. We've got a little poll to run for you briefly. Can we trigger that? Let's see. I don't have access to the polls. Can we go ahead and trigger that, please, David? Sorry, guys. I thought we had a poll up and running. So I will jump to questions, and we might come back to that poll as a part of questions in just a second. So I want to thank you and thank Legal Tech Talent Network for letting me to present. Again, you can reach out to me, Joshua Lenon, at joshua.clio.com, and we will take questions from the audience. I actually saw one was answered online. We all know that all that matters is revenue. All that matters is revenue. However, what are the liability ramifications if legal AI malfunctions, or otherwise does not operate as represented or as promised by the vendor? And what happens to employees who are replaced by AI? So I think the liability question is actually a really good one because, quite frankly, there is no perfect tool, and there never will be. There's always going to be a risk that either it does not function as promised, or you interpret it in a way that is unintended, or it wasn't the right tool for the job, right? And so we as legal professionals have to exercise our independent judgment on these tools and judge the output. Now, that's why I think no work activity that we took a look at was 100% automatable. And what we saw instead is that they might be 70 to 80% automatable. And that remaining 20% is us providing our professional judgment, our professional expertise, and really double checking how these things operate. Does that eliminate all risk? No, but neither does not using these tools. Importantly, we are seeing that professional liability insurers are starting to consider the risk of the use of AI tools and beginning to price those in to professional and commercial liability insurance. So reach out to your insurer and see what is their guidance on this, what is covered and what is not, and adjust to that as a part of your experimentation. But I think you'll be surprised at how much is covered. And lastly, what has to happen to employees who are replaced by AI? I think that's a bigger question than this presentation, to be perfectly honest. I think we're going to see increasingly changing dynamics in law firms, where just as we have with the invention of email and the internet, we've seen a reduction in the ratio of lawyers to legal secretaries. It used to be like 1-to-1, and now it's like 4 lawyers to a legal secretary. We are just going to see changing dynamics. But we're also going to see law firms start to bring in experts on these types of tools, legal technologists, prompt engineers, AI training teams. All of these people will be coming in. And so much like any industrial revolution, we will see a shift in work. Now, how radical that is something that is still to be determined, but it will exist. I've been informed that the poll will go out to registrants via email. And so I want to thank you. If you'll take a look for your email, it should be coming out in a business day or two. We'd really appreciate you taking a look at this poll and giving us candid feedback on this presentation. Did it provide helpful information? Was it in a way that was digestible? If you have further questions that you'd like to ask and get answers for, please take a look at this poll in the future so that we can better present to you. And I want to thank you all and hand it over to Rati to bring us home.
Oh, thank you very much, Joshua. That was very eye-opening. I enjoyed that. I hope everyone else enjoyed that as much as I did. And thank you for taking your time out. I know it's your first first meeting of the day. For some of us, it's towards the end of the day, but I'm glad I took the time out. So thank you very much for this time. As Joshua said, the poll will be sent to you via email. There'll also be a few follow-up emails that you will receive after this webinar too. If you want a copy of the recording, if you want to ask any more questions, and all our contact information for both Clio and for Legal Tech Talent Network will be in that email. And thank you so much for having me and joining us tonight. Take care and have a good night, everyone. Bye or good day, depending on where you are in the world.